right, I welcome everybody. I'm glad everyone is here. I hope we have time to hear all your voices, and going forward, we hope to do it in a timely manner, a well-conducted manner, and everybody's going to get your turn to speak. And our Jennifer is going to keep everything to around 3 minutes, so that way we're all fair. Anybody have any questions before we begin? That's positive. Welcome, Simon. Come on in. All right, we're ready to begin. Notice is hereby given pursuant to the Texas Open Meetings Act, Vernon's Annotated Civil Statute, Article 625217, that the city of Smithville will conduct a council meeting and public hearing on August 14, 2023 at 6 p.m. at City Hall located at 317 Main Street, Smithville, Texas. I'll call the meeting to order. Invocation will be read by Mr. Anthony Shields. Would you please come forward? The mic will turn on over here if you don't mind. That way everybody can hear you. I think you have to turn it on. Push the button. Hit test. Say test.
Test.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lord. Lord, we thank you, Lord Jesus, this evening, Lord, as we have this meeting for this evening for rules and regulations of the city council meeting, Lord. We ask that you would help each and every heart, Lord. Let each and every heart, Lord, come to a conclusion and agreement, Lord Jesus. You said all things work together for your good, Lord. And Lord, we thank you tonight, Lord Jesus, that you're in our hearts, Lord. We're keeping mindful of the things which are ahead. Lord, we ask that you would direct our path, Lord. And we thank you, Lord, in Jesus' name. Amen. To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The next item on the agenda will be Downtown Business Alliance initiatives, updates, and strategies. I think Tony Dudley is going to come share her words of wisdom with us. Lots of wisdom.
Hi, everybody. I'm super excited to be here. So I wanted to start off and tell you guys that on behalf of the Smithville Downtown Business Alliance, we really appreciate the respect and the ear you have given us, the communication, the willingness to hear all of our crazy brainstorming. And, you know, that it speaks a lot for y'all's desire to take part in that, moving our town forward and making it a more vibrant community. In preparation for this today, oh, and by the way, we do not need 10 minutes. We'll just make it real quick. In preparation for this, the Smithville Downtown Business Alliance, we've done our best to gain an understanding that the many hats you wear and your actionable role in the economic development of this town is focused on very specific areas. And to our understanding, meant to be more the muscle, maybe, behind programs developed by the chamber. Your muscle being land use, tax incentives, upgrading infrastructure, things of that nature. A few examples of success with our communication have been the fairy lights on Main Street, and you know, those being year round and being a permanent fixture. The street improvements, the seal coating, the ramp repair, things of that nature. The ongoing progress that Robert Tamble and a couple other people have made with the Texas Film Commission. You know, that article came out this week. I don't know if you guys had a chance to really read it, but I think it's something that could be a launching board to allowing us to communicate with those guys better and put this place a little bit more on the map in a positive way. So we thank you for that. We thank you for that commitment and what you guys have achieved. We also have discussed with you guys about a year ago, the city council exploring ways to improve Main Street's appearance by incentivizing owners of buildings to possibly lease out or sell to allow for a more consistent business presence. And then you guys had the facade improvement grants that y'all did, things like that. There was also talk of changes in land use, like maybe mixed use development down in the downtown districts. Can any of you guys rather, speak to what has really commenced in that? What has happened? Has anything been done on those fronts? Okay, the facade grants, which I know you guys had implemented. I'm not a building owner, so I don't know really what happened there, but changes in land use to promote mixed use development downtown. Has there been any progress on that? Has there been much discussion about that? If it hasn't, I'm just, throwing it out there. That was one of the things that we had talked about a year ago. So.
Facade grants will be included in this the year's budget under the community services line item 150. If the council chooses to support that, yes, there's going to be facade grants.
Cool. Okay.
Regarding land use, that's part of the comprehensive planning process, whereby we'll have a company come in and evaluate, where's your historic district? Where should it be? Where should you have SF1? What do we do about short-term rentals? And all that's going to involve stakeholder and community input throughout the process. Okay. The process in and of itself, GLO finally approved the RCP funding, the 300,000, but now they're writing the contract. So that's going to be another 2 months.
Okay.
So government moves slow. We move a little faster than federal government. I like to be proud to say, but it's coming. Okay?
Gotcha. Well, government's meant to move slow sometimes, make sure we get everything right. I appreciate that input for sure. I thought you had your hand up. I was like, yeah.
I should have teed this up. I promised a couple people that I would. A little over a year ago, there was a group, Downtown Business Alliance, that met. They reached out to me. I attended one of the meetings. They shared a number of ideas and initiatives that were subsequently shared at a presentation to the city council, where about 8 to 10 members each took a turn in a different portion. Those initiatives or ideas were passed along to the city manager, and I think that's the list that Tony was somewhat loosely referring to. There's included in your package a list of those along with responses from the city manager. I do think a number of those things have been done. Some of them were already in the works. For example, the lights. I noticed that the Hope Float restoration, sign restoration, is one of those ideas. There is in the package, I think that Jill included grant, maybe. There's going to be some consideration to the city having an opportunity to participate and help and finance that. So I think the point from my perspective is Downtown Business Alliance represents businesses in the core of the city that are really valuable to us and to the community. A lot of those business owners are people we all know and respect. We appreciate you coming out and sharing the ideas. I do think the planning process will be one of those opportunities to shape what happens. But I think you should continue to engage with the city manager and with the council with ideas that we can consider. So I should have teed that up before. I apologize.
No worries. There was a lot done. I really believe, and we do appreciate you guys meeting with us, Tom. So continuing along this line of thinking with this, where was the city in this? Where is y'all's role in this? In the bigger picture of things, we kind of started to conclude that where the city drops off, the chamber's meant to pick up. By developing programs to promote our town, actively searching and recruiting businesses to invest in brick and mortar storefronts in the Smithfield downtown district, as well as creating our town's face or maybe identity. Now, we all understand that the chamber right now is currently in transition probably the best word for it, and not operating at full capacity. So it appears the responsibility is kind of falling back on your shoulders, at least for the time being. This begs the question, who's picking up the reins? We have a ton of thoughts. We have a ton of ideas. We sit and we're our own little think tank, trying to figure out how to move this town forward in a very positive way. Do we contact you, Jill, or, are you part of the economic development? No? Jeez.
Yes,
It's your hair.
I'm
I
at the
am so
workforce,
sorry.
but
Do we contact Jill? She is not Jill. You are. Hi, Jill. How are you? Did you hear what I said? So I was talking about, how the chamber, given that they're in transition right now and not really able to move forward on promoting our city, building, economic growth and, bringing businesses here, it kind of ends up falling back on the councils or the cities shoulders, right? Is that something we communicate with you about with as far as economic development or? Okay. Absolutely. So we found, one thing we did was we researched some towns, some small towns around here. Taylor, Texas has had some amazing growth in the past several years. I used to live there and literally bought a house there for $20,000 like 12 years ago. It really wasn't all that long ago. And you look at it now and all those buildings look awesome. They've got a cigar shop. They've got a jeweler there. They've got some other businesses there. And so when we looked at their website, their chamber website, it's dynamic, it's vibrant. You can go there and go, hey, if I want to open a business here, maybe I do need 10 minutes. I'm sorry. If I want to open a business here, what do I do? Well, boom, you go right there on that website and it shows what state incentives they have. It shows what local incentives they have. One of the things that kind of hit me was, and you guys probably know this. I mean, this is all some of this stuff is new to me, but a tax increment reinvestment zones for stressed or depressed areas. I got news for y'all, but those buildings are stressed and depressed. And maybe we would qualify for something similar to that. I don't know, but it's something to think about. And, just in closing, I think that our biggest concern, the Alliance's biggest concern is we can't wait. We can't wait for the chamber to kind of get their stuff together. And, now we're 4, 5, 6 months down the road and they're starting that train. We need to do something now to continue the forward movement of this town. And we're at your disposal. We really are. So whatever we can do.
Comment? Well, if we had $20 billion from Samsung, I suspect that we would have coffee shops everywhere too.
Okay, fair is
Um,
fair,
and-
but
and
that happened
yeah.
way before Samsung.
And I'm not trying to diminish that. I think I'd like to try to get some kind of framework around, what is being discussed here. I think we all agree that improving commerce in our town, we've had a number of businesses fail or close in the last year or so. I think economic times are a little different today than they were 18 months ago with interest rates where they are and us kind of going through natural, recession and slowdown. I think tangible ideas, specific problem statements. How can we do X or how do we accomplish restoring the Hope Float signs, doing facade grants, paving streets, making sure sidewalks are in good repair, doing streetscapes, specific things that we can do. I think the Downtown Business Alliance can really help us a lot with that. The references to the chamber, the chamber in the city, I think in most towns, have a shared responsibility to work together. And the chamber, just to remind everybody, is a separate standalone entity with their own governance and their own staff and their own charter, distinctly different from the city and the city council. So we certainly want to work together, but I don't want there to be any mistake about control or involvement that the city has with regards to the chamber. It's a separate entity. So I would just love to see you continue to communicate with the city manager and with me or any other council members about specific ideas that you would like to see considered. And this is a great time because we're getting ready to start the budget process and.
And
know,
Jill, and Janice, not Jill,
uh,
as well
you-
as
you
Jill.
can- You can talk to anybody.
Oh, no, I want to, okay, so like you said, you guys are, you're at our disposal, right? This is
Yeah.
good, because, we just always have the same people doing the same kind of work throughout town. So this is really cool. So like if you got, the Business Alliance could come up, okay, what are your 5 main goals and what are the smart objectives for those goals, right? So come up with the 5. I know we have a list here for consideration for improving, but you said you have like a think tank.
We
If you
do.
guys come up with like 2 or 3, I mean, we're going to be going through budget workshops. So, like something realistic right now. So it has to be, specific. It has to be measurable. It has
Sure.
to be achievable. It has to be, the whole SMART, and it's got to have a timeline. So I
Absolutely.
would recommend coming up with like 4 or 5 of those that you can present to Jill or to the council, to where, we can really focus on those 5. Sometimes 5 is too many, maybe 3 that we can really focus on, because now we're going to start the comprehensive plan. Boom, we have, hey, that's what you guys really need downtown. And then you have a group. This is good. We need more people to help. So this is awesome.
That's a
Thank you.
fantastic idea, and we'll
Thank you.
certainly work towards that. We, when we saw we went to the economic forums and that gal that came in and everything, and maybe with that, we can derive some real actionable items that would make a difference and help us progress for sure. We're happy to facilitate that as well.
Meetings,
We meet every week on Wednesdays. Yeah.
Wednesday, what time?
Yeah. 2 o'clock. I don't know. I just show up.
So you came to the Lori Vincent when she came in, and she's like our person that was coming on Tuesday nights and doing some of the economic development stuff.
Right.
I think I did see you there, Tony.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you all meet every week
Mhm.
on Wednesdays. So are you the leader?
I'm the chair. Yes.
You're the chair. Okay, perfect. So if you can come up with those goals, I mean, I think that's what we all really need to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Good
We're happy
job.
to communicate those.
Yeah, perfect.
All right.
For the Downtown Alliance? Okay. Yes, if they signed up to speak, yes.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Yes. And I asked everybody to be respectful of the 3 minutes, so.
Hi, Ashley Harris, representing myself as well as Smithville Brewing Company. While not official Smithville city resident, as a new business owner and community member at large, I'm here today to share my support of some of the goals and work of our Downtown Business Alliance. While I'm not an official member, I think we all support as small business owners. We're all in such a small community. We're really here to support each other and leverage each other and really driving the economic development of this community. Given Council Member Etheridge, your comment on the budget planning process, there are some specific recommendations I've noticed in some of the strategic plans and surveying you guys have done in the past that I think, this is a great opportunity to take action on. One of those recommendations includes kind of really investing in revamping some of the community engagement and economic development strategies, including dedicated staff with expertise in economic development as well as community engagement. I noticed there was a community engagement position currently posted, and I would recommend, if it's possible, to really revamp that to both integrate economic development and community engagement, because I believe if you have a position like that that's really dedicated to both of those strategies, you're going to get an economic development plan, some action planning that really meets all of the holistic goals that both the city and community members have for this wonderful community. Another thing I wanted to note is I have in the next month, I'm going to be offloading some of our social media and overall outreach and promotion work. I'm going to contract it out because the reality is it's a skill set that I do not have. It's a skill set that many cities do not have. And I would encourage the city council to maybe work in partnership with the chamber or other entities to get some of that support as it relates to social media, promotion, and outreach for the community. Those are just the 2 things I wanted to note. And thank you to Mr. Tamble, thank you for all your support. I know when we were coming into the community, as well as all the city council and our business leaders who really want to see this community thrive for a long time.
And we still want to annex you.
I know. Okay. We'll talk about it after we get some of these economic development strategies in place.
I ask you that every time.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Welcome, Simon.
So I'm Simon Madera. I'm the owner of Cardinal Limpet. They're down here in downtown Smithville. I'm a restaurateur in Austin, Texas. This is my only location here, but I have our own second home, vacation home that we.
And
spend
he
time
also
in.
has opened some rentals up.
So yeah, we
around
have
Garwood.
two micro lodging communities that we're soon to open. One of them opens hopefully in the next couple of weeks. Then we have a kayaking ranch down on 71 in the Colorado River that we're about to hopefully set. And maybe we'll get annexed so we can get some some permit.
We can talk. You gotta figure.
Anyway, so I wrote a letter to this council and to the people that were here, a few weeks ago, a
Yes.
month ago. And you know, the goal here for me is not to rehash kind of what was part of that letter. But one of the things that as we're talking about ideas and strategic dynamic thoughts to try to get this ball rolling. You know, I'm kind of here to just to introduce myself, because I don't come to these because I live in Austin and have a busy life in Austin, but I spent a lot of time in this town. I care about this town. I've had a restaurant here for 3 years. I'm personally really invested. And part of my dynamic approach is rather basic. It's not dynamic. I think we're working with companies or designers and graphics people. And we just secured a domain by the name of smithvillage.com. And we're all kind of working on a way to make it great. And we look at our own website and the way we work with social media. And there's just a disconnect, right? And so at the end of the day, one of the realization I had, and I shared with Tom, that this falls on me. So not only do I have to invest in a bunch of property and develop those properties and create jobs here in town and have places open and have office hours for the restaurant, I also have to find a way to promote it. And through my means and my revenue streams in Austin, but you know, it feels a little bit unfair and like an unattainable goal here in town unless we do it personally. And it was just a realization. And I think that we all struggle with social media, as you know, and we pay people to handle that for us. And I think that part of what I want to see is, you know, the word dynamic is super well used, and I really appreciate it. But this is not a cutting edge ask. This is a basic ask, and we want to know how we promote the town. And part of it is the billboards, the social media, the idea of people actually believing that this town is doing something fun, something cool, right? Whether it's lodging or kayaking or festivals, or there's a brewery. And so people just don't know that, right? And so that's it. If you want me to end there, I can cut it. But anyway, that was all, right? It was a lot of my introduction and me just kind of following up on kind of where she was. I got here and Tiffany, you know, I do want to mention the hot tax, but I only have 3 minutes. We're about to be contributors of that. And we want us to use that money
Whose hand was that?
to where we see benefits
Oh.
from tourism
Okay.
coming into town.
Thank you for being here. Thank you for coming.
I'll come to more of them, I promise.
Okay, I'll invite you every week. Oh, every month. We only have them once a month. Ooh. Is anybody else signed up to speak, or does anyone else want to speak? You have 3 minutes. Everybody good?
I think it's appropriate for me to give an update on some of these items that you're speaking of, because it's coming up in the budget that the council are going to have to consider. We've been working a long time to try to fix the issues on Northeast and Northwest Second for drainage. We do have a GLO grant that's going to fix that. Within the next 12 to 18 months, construction will start to improve the drainage, connected to phase 1 that's already been performed. That was about $1 million job. Another 1.8 million to be spent on this drainage project, going to lower the street, put curbs and gutters, and contemplate possibly new ornamental lighting. Our lights are 35 years old. The incandescent ornamental lights that go along Main Street. So there's an opportunity by possibly going after a tax note to evaluate whether or not we want to change those lights to dark skies compatible, something acornish, or whatever the city, the community wants to see. So we're looking at that. Next thing that's going to happen is a TxDOT grant to upgrade all of the corners on Main Street for ADA compliance, and then put sidewalks from Main and First all the way back to 95. So there's a lot of infrastructure projects. The seeds were planted 2, 3, 4 years ago that will come to fruition in the next 12 to 18 months. So I wanted to give you that input.
Comment. I think that one of the things that probably everybody here on the dais have heard is we want to retain our small town charm. That's something that I can't tell you how often and how frequently I'm told that. It's a real balancing act and a real art to be able to balance economic growth and still retaining the small town charm. Because when you think about economic development, you think about getting bigger and having more people and all of the things that go with economic growth. And certainly those are necessary. But in doing that as your singular pursuit without the offset of the things that retain the small town charm, I think is where we all need to focus. How do we get that right balance?
I had one comment, Mayor, if you don't mind. I understand the frustration that some of you feel, particularly in the downtown area, but overall in the community from a business development perspective. My colleagues have heard me say many times that we move too slow, but this is just it's part of the process. But we are moving into 3 critical functions that is really going to be it's going to develop the future, and we do need your input because we're moving into the budget process. We're moving into the comprehensive plan development, which will set the future for the next 15 or 20 years. And we're also going to be fleshing out our economic development process and priorities. So it's not that we don't hear you, we do. It's just hard to present you tangible stuff at times. And Robert was just demonstrating some of the tangible results that have come, but it takes a while to get them in place. So we hear you.
For speaking, and little by little, we will all work together and it'll have a great outcome. So look forward to it. Next item on the agenda is proclamation for co-pastors Ronnie Holt and Lenora W. Holt Day. Did Lenora come in? There she is. Whereas co-pastors Ronnie L. Holt and Lenora W. Holt is commemorating their 7th pastoral anniversary as co-pastors of Abundant Grace Community Church on Sunday, August 27, 2023, the church congregations, family, and friends from all over have proudly come together to help celebrate the services and the sacrifice of God's servants. And whereas under the direction of the Holy Spirit, co-pastors Ronnie L. Holt and Lenora W. Holt was installed as pastors of the Abundant Grace Community Church in 2016. And throughout this time, they have fervently embraced the visions of God has given them and continue to provide strong leadership needed to help improve and enrich the lives in Smithville and surrounding cities. And whereas co-pastors Ronnie and Lenora firmly believe that the church must be a church moving forward and serve the community of Smithville through faith, unwavering love, and spiritual work. And whereas we are proud to call them our pastors, our leaders, and friends, and join citizens throughout Smithville, Texas, and beyond in thanking them for all they do and have done over the past 7 years, and look forward to their continual spiritual guidance for many more years to come. Now therefore, I, Sharon Forrester, Mayor of the City of Smithville, hereby honor the 7th pastoral anniversary of co-pastors Ronnie and Lenora and proclaim Sunday, August 27, 2023, as co-pastors Ronnie and Lenora within the city, and urge all citizens of Smithfield to acknowledge the occasion of this day. Thank you, Ronnie and Lenora. Will y'all please come forward? I truly appreciate everything you do for this community. And I enjoyed meeting you. What did I do with it? Just one second.
Can I say a few words real
Please
quick?
do.
So Lenora also just graduated from Texas Tech this last week, so a lot of good surprises. She received her master's in nursing, and she's been working for the Smithville Community Clinic as our registered nurse for the last 3.5 years. She also deployed to Ukraine when we did a medical mission, and runs a beautiful, what do you call your play day that you do at the church? What are we calling that again? Your block party, the block party, right? She does that every year. Ronnie just recently came to work at the Workforce Training Center as a case manager. So I just, these two are really instrumental working in the community, and thank you guys.
Next item on the agenda is approval from the minutes from July 10th, 2023 council meeting and public hearing. Have y'all had time to read everything?
Make a motion, Mayor, I make a motion. We go ahead and approve the minutes from our July 20, day was it again?
July
Sorry.
10th?
July 10th city council meeting. Thank you.
I need it. I have a motion has been made and second, all in favor. Any opposed? Motion is approved. Next item on the agenda is discussion on utility bills and Wholesome Electric. Robert Campbell, does this say Wholesome? Wholesale, sorry. Sorry about that. Wholesale. Robert Campbell, our city manager, is going to give his presentation. And when he's finished with the presentation, I'll invite everyone that wants to speak. You'll have 3 minutes, okay? Thank you. All right, take it away with your Wholesome.
Good evening, y'all. How you doing? It's hot outside. Contrary to popular belief, city employees, city council members, the mayor, or the city manager do not get their electric or water for free.
No.
Okay. Yeah, no doubt.
Can we vote on that?
Next slide, please. Okay, so thank you all for coming out. I understand there's a little concern and frustration amongst the community regarding the high electric rates. Understandably, I'd like to ensure that, all the social media posts that were on Facebook, a lot of times it was apples to oranges comparison, and that some folks do say, well, my electric bill was X, when in fact it was a utility bill. We bill, unlike some other communities, a total utility bill, which is water, sewer, garbage, electric, other fees. So we need to make sure we're talking apples to apples comparison. And throughout tonight's presentation, you're going to see how, as best as you can try, the nuances with how other communities and other municipalities charge their customer electric rates varies widely. And so we're going to talk about some of those tonight. So what happened in July, right? Well, there was an increase in fuel and power cost recovery factor. And I think that's a misnomer. When you hear fuel, you think, okay, fuel cost. We're going to talk a little bit about the LCRA, our wholesale power provider, and how those rates are calculated, but more importantly, how we calculate the rate and pass that on to the citizens. Last month, there were 34 days in the billing cycle, June 8th to July 12th. Why? Well, we do have an AMI system. advanced metering infrastructure system, which is a digital system as opposed to the old analog. There are some people that have opted to opt out of the analog system and still have digital meters. I'm sorry, have digital meters, but they still have analog meters at their house. So we have to go send someone to read those meters. Our meter accuracy is 99.8%. We do not do bench meter testing. We send them out to be tested, but we have only had one that's ever read inaccurately. The problem that we had, which causes the manual reads, we have things called owls and collectors receptors that push the information out to our billing system. Well, when those collectors default or go bad, we have to send somebody out and take a handheld, push a button, and bring them in so that we can do the bills. There were 400 reads that we had a major collector failure, and there were 400 reads that were late. So you may have been one of the individuals that had 34 days in their billing cycle as opposed to 30. The heat, the 35, 36 days now of 100-degree plus weather is a record, right? That increased both demand and consumption. So I did a little survey of the people who were concerned and frustrated on Nextdoor, Facebook, and any other media platform. And without fail, the majority, 99% of those people actually had 3 to 5 times the consumption from the prior month. So folks are using more electricity. When it's 107 degrees outside and you're trying to keep your thermostat at 80, your AC is going to continuously work to try to make up that difference. So I think people weren't quite honest with themselves. They immediately blamed the city. We're trying to rob you, do this, that, and the other. That's not the case. Consumption went up 3 to 5% across the board. I mean, 3 to 5x times. So those are some of the factors that caused this to happen. I will say that the people who had 34 days billing, the next cycle, which is coming out at the end of the month, those folks will have 27 days. Okay. So by nature and default, those 400 or some customers, their bill is going to reflect a 27-day usage. Okay. How do we calculate the cost? We, of course, have a wholesale power agreement with LCRA, but how we calculate the cost is the current bill divided by the prior month's consumption plus the distribution fee. That gives you your electric cost per kilowatt for the coming month. Again, it's the bill, the current bill, divided by the prior month's consumption gives you the next month's fuel cost. What happened in May? May was wonderful. Nice, cool, leave the windows open. June, it's like someone opened the gates of hell in July, right? So the consumption went up in June, but the consumption in May was much, much less, but we got the bill for June, and that created a humongous delta, which resulted in a 16.22 cent per kilowatt charge. Okay. Next slide. All right, we do have a wholesale power agreement with LCRA, as most of the smaller towns in our area have. Can you hear me okay if I step back? I feel like I'm back. Can you still hear okay? All right, good. This is the 30-year contract that was signed in 2011. So we're locked into this until 2041. The particulars of that contract are confidential. So you're not going to hear what LCRA charges us as a fuel and power cost recovery factor. But know this, it's not just fuel. LCRA is a great partner, but they use a blended approach. It's gas, it's hydro, it's solar, and what did I miss? Coal. Okay. So as I was speaking to our LCRA rep, just because gas prices go down don't mean the other costs are going to follow. And keeping that in mind, how many here were in Smithville in 2021 when Uri hit? Okay. Did your power go off? And it didn't because we're on what's called, we have a critical load at the hospital. Okay, so we don't get on their list at this time of rolling brownouts or blackouts. I was still worried. I don't know if you folks know, but we're about 4 minutes from total grid failure in Texas. You know, there are 9 of these stations where somebody operators that control the grid and frequency. We run on 60 hertz. Okay. When your frequency starts going below that, it's like a tire. It starts to wobble, an unbalanced tire at 59. If you get between 59 and 58, the wobble gets much more. You get to 58, the wheel's going to fall off. We were 4 minutes from complete grid failure. If that would have happened, it would have been 3 to 4 to 6 months for recovery. Okay. Because of Uri, and we didn't get shut down, there were ancillary charges that we had to pay. A lot of people in the deregulated market went broke. You know, sometimes they were charging $9,000, you know, for a megawatt. Our charge for the luxury of not having the power go off was $840,000. This is 3 years ago. LCRA worked a deal with us and allowed us to pay that off in 3 years. We're still paying on that balance. That's an additional $23,000 to $25,000 a month. Okay. So that's part of the cost that I can share with you regarding why your bill is a little higher at this point. Excuse me. So we're going to call the power cost recovery factor. That gets calculated and it's based upon timing. We're going to talk about that in a moment in a little detail as I have actual calculations that you can see how this works. But we add a distribution fee, you know, 5 cents per kilowatt. And that fee helps pay for the materials, the equipment, the supplies, the personnel. All right, it happened. Yeah, no, I gotta stand up. That better? I need one of the Pell mics. Okay, so the distribution fee helps pay for the materials, supplies, equipment, and personnel that respond and maintain the 47 miles of utility lines that we have in Smithville. That's bucket trucks. That's Edwards Group. That's people going out in the middle of a frigid weather or blistering heat to fix your lines and to maintain those lines. Okay. Next slide. Oh, this was on 7th Street. Go back one. Yeah, we had a van line come through on 7th and pull down about 3 or 4 houses service and knocked power out for 8 hours. There's 104.5 out there. And Edwards guys got that back on. You know, 25 families were impacted within 6 hours. So good job. Okay, let's talk about fuel cost calculations. Again, I said it was timing. A cool May, heavy bill in June. These are the actual calculations. Jennifer, you can maybe hit the, yes, let's go to one. So I can share with you what the LCRA bill was. I just can't tell you because of the competitive market that they're in, what those rates are. But that was our actual bill in June, which reflects, excuse me, May's consumption. But let's talk about the elephant in the room, the 16.22 cent. Go back to the left. $276,000 charge, 2,400,000 kilowatts. That gives you an 11 cent FPCR, fuel and power cost recovery factor. You add the 5 cents, that's where the 16.2 cents comes in. Let's go down to current month. Look at the consumption. Look at the bill. 329,000 went up a little bit. Why? Demand and consumption. But look also at, oh, look at here. Hold on. Look at there. That's the actual consumption. So a lot more kilowatts were being, sorry about that. Let me shut this lightsaber off. Workers' comp, sorry. Okay, so the good news here, go over to, you can go ahead and enlarge it. The rate for August is 11 cents. And this, because we have a variable rate that is actually set by ordinance, and that this is how we calculate what your fuel cost is going to be. It causes a yo-yo effect. Okay. We're going to talk about some recommendations at the end of the presentation as to what we can possibly do to correct that. Excuse me. So what does consumption contain? So we get a bill from LCRA and you take a look at the use. Now that use is comprised of residential, commercial, public lighting. We have almost 800 street lights that are unmetered that are a part of this number. Our public buildings. And of course, there's line loss. So that's why you have such a delta between what was billed and what was used. Okay, next slide. I think some of you have this in your packets. This is a look historically by the way we calculate. These are not, I repeat, LCRA fuel costs. These are how the city of Smithville uses its variable model to charge you what the rate is. So this is not LCRA. This is taking all the factors that I just talked about, the line loss, the unmetered sales, and it comes out with what your fuel cost is going to be. You add the distribution rate, here's your chart. Okay. As you can see, 5 years back, have that in the upper right-hand corner, pretty consistent. Anybody see the right-hand corner? Okay, good. Pretty consistent usage over the years. Next slide. Not only do I have the current year's usage, I go back to 2014. So I can get an average of what these costs are in aggregate. So as you can see, from 2014 to 2018, it was about 11 cents, 11 to 12 cents. It stayed that way. Uri hit, it went up. And so the average cost per kilowatt now, given July's anomaly, is 13 cents. Next slide. I'm sorry, is that better? No, thanks. I need to know that. I just didn't like to hunch back. Okay, well, I'm gonna hold like this, eat the mic. Okay, so I had my team do some benchmarking. And I found out that the majority of the cities around us utilize LCRA. And a variable cost model like we do. Can you blow some of that up, please? Yep. You all see that in the back now? We looked at LaGrange, Bastrop, Flatonia, and Elgin. Elgin was the only municipality that offers a choice. TXU, Reliant, and there was one more that escapes me. I didn't have room on the spreadsheet to put it there. They do not have a variable rate. TXU does charge a base rate of $9.95. Reliant does not. But look at the fixed cost. So if you click on these websites, you can pick your plan, which is kind of neat, but look at the cost. So you can do month to month, and the more you use, the lower the rate goes. But I put there the lowest rate. So $16.90 is it. 16.9 cents a kilowatt. Go back to the left, please. More. Okay, there's been concern that our distribution fee is too high. These fees are set by council over the years, and I have a chart that will show you that in a moment. But I want you to also look at LaGrange. Okay, so LaGrange distribution fee, it differs with the amount of kilowatts that you use. If you use less than 500 kilowatts, it's 4 cents. If you use more, it's 3 cents per kilowatt hour. If you add that to your variable cost, you get a rate of 0.0904, 9 cents a kilowatt. Okay, but look at the base rate, 15.50. That's the challenge that I found, and I know Pace, you show a lot of examples about other municipalities, Georgetown, bigger cities who have very small rates. What they have that we don't is economic development, sales tax, property tax, hot tax that we don't have. So the way the city has made up for that is charging a base rate and the 5-cent distribution fee, which pays for, again, the equipment, the personnel, the supplies, and the materials to maintain the 47 miles of electric lines that we have here in Smithville. Okay, Bastrop, let's go over. A similar situation, $10, same base rate. They also utilize LCRA. If they are outside the city limits, their choice is Bluebonnet Electric. So that changes things a little bit. In that Bluebonnet Electric has a $29 base rate. Anybody on Bluebonnet? What's your base rate, if you don't mind me asking? 23? Okay, well, I just got 29 today, but maybe so. All right, let's go to the lower left, please. So here's a comparison of cities our size in the area who utilize LCRA with a variable rate. As you can see, we're kind of right in the middle at 11.55. That's just for August. Okay, this is going to change again. It also changes the nuances between municipalities in the days that they bill. We bill the 8th to the 8th. Bastrop bills 15th to the 15th. So everyone's different. So we all have to understand that it could be apples to oranges comparison. I'm trying to provide apples to apples. Let's go to the right. What is this thing called distribution fee, and how long have we had it? In 2008, the fee was 3.8 cents. As you move to the right, you see it increase because, let's face it, as time goes on, things cost a lot more money. Transformers cost more money. The wire costs more money. The poles, the equipment. Heck, even Edward costs more money. Anyway. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, I got you. Yeah. We did make so the rate, the distribution rate has been the same for 6 years for the residential, those who live inside the city limits. We thought, well, let's encourage annexation. And the council made a decision in 2018 to raise the distribution fee for those who live outside the city limits to 6.5 cents. So if you live in the city limits, you're getting the deal, right? Okay. Reduce. I want to remind you that the base rate, the $10 and the distribution fee pay for all that equipment we've already talked about, but it also allows us to transfer $1 million to the general fund. Okay. To give you more safety and health services, because we just don't have the revenue to make up for that. And that's why that distribution rate is where it is. If we didn't have the utility fund, I had to shut the library down or the airport or those non-revenue generating services that we provide. So it's a good thing. And I don't see it changing anytime soon until we get more tax revenue from property, more sales tax, and more hot tax. Next slide. Here's the good news, as I've already kind of alluded to. August, the rate's going to be down to 11.55 cents. Those people who had 34 days in the billing cycle will have 27. And if you don't, let us know. Y'all ain't shy. I ain't gonna lie about that. There's no relief in sight for this heat wave. It's unprecedented. We need rain. Trees are just falling over. Say, I quit. Pecan trees, we had two today fall in the middle of the street. So I'm using more water to try to make my trees not die. Next. So in summary, the seasonal demand has increased consumption. The number of days that were charged in the July billing cycle and the methodology with which we calculate the fuel costs exacerbated the situation. Again, people are using 3 to 5x the amount of energy to cool their homes and or water their grasses. But we're talking about electricity, not water. So you can expect significantly lower costs in August. You can always implement energy conservation guidelines and techniques in your house. There are so many things that you probably never even think about that pull electricity. And even if you had your thermostat on 78 or 80, which I do, that AC unit is running. Do you have a electric toothbrush? That's plugged in. What about a clock radio, microwave, your Wi-Fi, little smelly things you put to, in the walls? Those all pull power. So if you implement some of these energy conservation guidelines, it could help bring your rates down. On average right now, as I've already said, the cost per kilowatt is 12 to 13 cents. Our recommendations or options that the council needs to consider is continue with this variable model, which is not uncommon with other municipalities in our area, or you can evaluate establishing a fixed rate model if you would like, but that rate's going to be 12 to 13 cents. Got to cover the cost of what keeps this city running. So if you're in March, the windows are open, it's nice. Well, now your rate's 13 cents. So it's things that you need to consider. One more thing I'd like to ask, that the ladies at the front, at the utility counter, they take so much abuse. It's unnecessary, it's disrespectful. And I've told them, if someone cusses you out, respectfully ask them, stop that talk. Otherwise, boom. There's no reason for that to happen. I feel for what they go through every month. And, God love them. It's not their fault that the bills are high. Questions? Next chart. Oh, I have a couple more slides. Let's just run through them right quick, please. If you can't pay your bill, we do make arrangements. We understand things come up. We're one of the few entities that does. I don't think Bluebonnet makes arrangements. If you don't pay your bill, if you can't pay, you can't stay. All right. But we do try to work with people to try to bring them into get their bills under control. There is a 10% penalty on delinquent accounts. That's the total bill. It's like a credit card. So it really behooves you to keep up with that. If you have $1,000 bill, it's late, before you turn on a light switch, it's $100. So that's why we try to ratchet it down to, at one time we had cutoffs at 90 to 120. Well, the bills were getting outrageous. We're losing revenue. The people can't keep up with it. It's just a bad situation. But should you need assistance, and besides working with the city to try to make payment arrangements, and I'll say this, your word is your bond. If you come in and say you're going to make arrangements, make sure you make those, because we will cut you off otherwise. St. Vincent de Paul, CCA, next slide. And all the host of other folks can provide assistance if you need it. Next slide. This is just the ordinance whereby sets or establishes the variable rate model that we use for fuel cost. Next, that's it. All right, thank you. Any questions, council?
Come on. Great presentation, Robert. Thank you. If you could dumb it down for me on one of the original slides, Jennifer, the one on fuel cost calculations, where we can see there it is. So the disconnect from my brain is the environment hasn't changed that much between July and August, June. So how did we go down from almost 14 cents to 14 to 16 to 11? And there's my disconnect.
Look at your consumption. You went from 2 million in July. The bill was higher, but your usage caught up with itself. And it's just a math function. So we'll get a bill again. And with everybody using as much as they're using, this is going to stabilize. I don't know what that's going to look like officially, but it's not going to be 16 cents. Just by nature of, if you go back to, Jennifer, the rates, the years of, one more. It's pretty consistent. The highs, beware of the J months, June, July, January. Those are typically where the highs are, but we do have sprinkled throughout using a variable model, a rate of 9 cents. Okay. So if you take a look at last year's rate, 2022. Yeah, you see what happened June, July, August. It's going to stabilize. The data is, the data, historic data tells me this.
Doubled, right?
Yes, it did.
So we're spreading the cost out among more kilowatt hours. Okay. My light just went off.
A comment before.
My head just went off.
And yeah, I mean, all of us up here, and Robert included, I know he feels this way, but all of us, we're representatives of you. So we're here to make sure and not only ask the questions that we think are pertinent, but also to be, to some extent, ask the questions that we're hearing from the community. So everybody has the benefit of those. I like to look at city finances, and Robert touched on it towards the end. I think it's a really, really important thing to keep in mind. You can get lost in all these numbers. I have found Robert over the years to be exceptionally good at this sort of stuff. He just has a really good knack for it, and he has a background that allows him to present this stuff really well. And I thought the presentation does a great job of showing how the math works for how us as citizens calculate out what we pay. And we all know that we can, to some extent, control that through thermostat and consumption to some extent. But the two pieces that I think could benefit from having more transparency are the LCRA, which I know there is some non-disclosure language there, but understanding that the citizens of Smithville are getting a relatively fair shake among all the people that use LCRA. And I think Robert has demonstrated, at least in his research, that we are. The second that doesn't have a ton of transparency is the distribution fee, which I kind of consider the profit for the city. I know that it's not just pure profit. We use it to pay expenses. But if you think about city finances, there's kind of these two buckets. There's a general fund and a utility fund, with the exception of property taxes that flow through the general fund on the revenue side. All the revenue that pays for the library and the rec center and the police department, all the things that we do, Robert referred to them as all the things that are services to us. They have to come from someplace. And the utility fund is where they come from. And we transfer money every month. And Cynthia transfers money every month. And you can see it in the financials under the other category, I think, is where it shows as other revenue in the general fund. That's the money that comes from the profit from the utility company that funds all of those other services. So, big picture, it helps me to keep that in mind. You can't just isolate one part because of the unique way that cities are set up and how you have so many things that we do for our community that don't generate enough revenue to pay for themselves. So they have to be paid for elsewhere, and they come from property taxes, they come from sales tax, they come from, the utility fund. So in the future, I would really like to understand better how the city, and in particular city manager, how we determine that 5.5 cents is the right number. How do we come up with that, with that number? We don't have to do it tonight. I just think that's one area that I think the citizens could benefit from some transparency. And then the other would be, to the extent we can, we've got 18 years, I guess, out in front of us on this LCRA contract. Are all of those costs determinable today, Robert, or are they variable? Do we just get a bill every month from the LCRA without, is it a black box? They just send you a bill, or
No, sir.
who sees the detail?
It's broken down.
Okay, do you see it?
We see it.
And so
yes.
the things that are confidential that can't be disclosed, who knows those details? Okay, so
Cynthia and
you know,
myself.
so,
Yeah.
so I know, but so you're subject to the provisions of the contract that are non-disclosable by contract. Okay.
Yes, and the city council in executive session could review that plan, that
Okay, perfect.
wholesale agreement.
That's what I'm trying to understand. There is a mechanism. I think you can make freedom of information, but there is some exclusions to that. And I think that utility companies have some protection for that.
They do. In fact, you can request a copy of the wholesale power agreement from LCRA, but it will go through the open records request process here at the city. But it will go to the Attorney General. And if you're looking for what the rate is, you're not going to get it. They have an exclusionary clause, as you said.
Yeah. Okay. So I've talked to a lot of citizens the last 2 weeks, a lot of emails, a lot of phone calls. These are some of the things, the feedback. So I'm not trying to suggest they're all necessarily mine, although I think they're great questions. I just like to see more transparency. And so whenever we do the budget, do you revisit that distribution fee annually, or how?
Well, again, you have to take a look, and part of that is a discussion we're going to have about the budget process. Where are you? Where do you want to be? How are you going to fund it? Are you going to raise taxes? Are you going to raise fees? In the past, that was a mechanism that we utilized to be able to transfer the money over from the utility fund to the general fund to fund the services with which we couldn't. And citizens don't like their taxes raised.
But it hasn't been changed since 2018, right?
That's correct.
Okay. So see, that is one of those, when we go through this budget process and we try to figure out everything costs more than it did last year, how we figure out how to do the things that we want to do. Property tax is obviously one of them, but things like that distribution fee is another one.
Well, I'm also taking into account the benchmark data from other municipalities in
Right.
the area. Yeah, our distribution rate is among the higher in the area, but also our base rate is lower in some cases. And that revenue difference is what's saving LaGrange, for instance.
If you look at the average use, that extra kilowatt charge on the distribution for the average user, is a dollar in the base rate more meaningful? I mean, do they save more money by having a higher base rate and a lower kilowatt, or a higher kilowatt and a lower base?
We use both, and my head's not on to tell you that answer right now.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because
Okay.
I'd have to get some paper and do some head
Obviously, it's a
scratching.
balance.
Yeah.
anyways.
Yeah, I'd just like everybody to know that the 5 cents that goes there that we're talking about, this distribution fee. Thank you. Okay, these guys are working nonstop. They are out there in the heat. They are out there in the cold. They're making sure that everybody has electricity as fast as they can get it. Even at that, a lot of them are not paid the current wage scale because we haven't been able to afford it. I want everybody to know that every one of these men and women that work out there are doing a great job to make sure that your electricity stays on and that everything that you need happens. They're there to respond to the trees to come down, to the water leaks, all that stuff. So it's important that we make sure that we have the money to pay them.
Citizen comments? Pace, will you state where you live and your name, please, for the record? Uh-oh,
Is it on?
it doesn't sound like we're hearing.
Can you hear me? All right. Hi, my name is Pace Davis. I live at 707 Bishop. I've got a few things prepared. I might ask for a little extra time. I know it's 3 minutes, but I might ask for it at some point. First, I want to say that I don't think anyone has suggested an underfunding our departments as a result of any of these energy issues. I think that what I'm interested in is in the numbers and in the money that's made, not in underpaying or not paying our utility workers. Or like, we have great services in the city. So first, let's get that out of the way. That is not my criticism. I would not want to see a soul laid off over a half a cent, right, per kilowatt hour. So I want to thank you, Robert, for the presentation. And I want to thank all the council members who responded to me and taking time to take citizen input, give out information about this matter. I'm not going to talk much about LCRA unless I have some time at the end. I think that you've covered that and that agreement and how we just don't get to look under that veil, period, right? I hope you're using every lever you have, and that's all I'll say on that. But after speaking to a lot of concerned residents, I do want to address what you, the council, actually have power over, which is that distribution fee, right? And if it was a normal year and it was 98 or 100, right? That distribution fee would bring in the amount of money that you've budgeted for this year. That's not the case this year. It's 105, 106, 107, right? And so if there's a budget windfall as a result of that distribution fee, my argument is not if you don't meet your budget, give it back to us, but if you go beyond your budget, if you make an extra $100,000 off this, unreasonably hot summer, I think that should be rebated to us, the citizens, right? Because we're currently bearing the costs of URI. We're currently bearing the costs of a high energy market, right? And we're currently bearing the cost of BCAD and everything else. And I think that you have the ability, if we end up over in budget, to keep us closer to on par with other energy providers. I also think you have the ability to alter the punitive 10% late fee that we have for energy bills. Now, we had a $700 bill. That's the whole utility bill. But if we paid on the 11th of the month, it would have been $70. The 11th, not the 31st, not the first of the next month, the 11th, right? Okay. Now, bills get bigger, energy costs go up, right? Does it always need to be 10%? Could it be 5%? Could be capped at $25 max or $40 max? Could you put in writing on the bill, if you come down to the city and talk to us, we will waive it. If you make a payment plan and stick to it, you will not pay a late fee. That could be in writing on the bill. As one council member told me, if you do come down, it will get waived. And if that's the case, put it in the bill. Get people ahead of their problems, right?
Say it again.
Say that again.
What did you say?
Yeah. So yeah. So if someone comes down on the night and says, I lost my job, I'm going to pay you. I need till the 15th. I was told that it's possible to waive that late fee. Okay.
Do you have a lot more to say? Because I like to stay within the 3 minutes.
Yeah. I've got like two more things to say. I've got two more small paragraphs, maybe like a minute and a half. more.
How many people do we have signed up? The other two, do you have a lot to say? Minus one. Okay, well, you can have her 3 minutes.
Mayor, I may end up having a question for him. Is that going to extend his time?
Sorry, what? No,
I'm
no,
gonna have
I
a
want
question
you-
for him,
no,
so
I
I'll
want you to
extend.
finish, but I didn't know how many we had signed up and I don't want to disrespect anyone.
I appreciate it.
Okay, go
I-
ahead.
So I encourage you to take any budget surplus that Smithville will earn from this summer and rebate it to us, the citizen and residents who are currently bearing the downside of these policies. And I have no doubt that you can come up with a million good reasons the city needs more money. I don't. I know the city needs money, right? But you don't need it more than a retiree living on a fixed social security check. And you don't need it more than someone making $14 an hour who's going to work 15 hours to pay off the extra bill they got last month. If you want money, I suggest you get it from us in a bond the right way. I'll vote for a bond if you need money, but get it the right way. You set a budget, and if you meet that budget, give the cream back off the top. And for next year and future years, consider if being one of, if not the most expensive distribution fee, right? As far as I can find, it's the most 20 to 300% higher than people around us. Is the goal, right? If that's a mantle, or that's something you want to carry. Lastly, I'd like to say that I have a concern about the average kilowatt hour price calculation in your presentation, Robert. You said between 12 and 13 cents. That's calculated for the average of 2023 up to this point. 13 and a tenth cent is what I saw. Ours, August 2022 to July 2023, our home's average was 14 and a tenth. And why was that? Anyone in this room can take your average, take all your total usage over 12 months and divide it by the dollar amount you paid for your electricity. Now, I think your number, Robert, is 1 kilowatt every month divided by 12. And that's not how electricity works. You said yourself, the J months are painful. Now, if you take those months, you average it, I think there are better ways that you could arrive at that number. And I think it'd be more accurate and more transparent for us, because I'm sure that you have averages for the average usage across all of the city of all months. And then you could divide that by the amount people pay. Thank you guys for your time. Please let me know if you have any questions.
This is going to go both ways. Pace, thank you very much. Certainly encourage everyone to come up here and speak their mind, but you've done a lot of homework and it's been a great analysis. To the flip side of one of the points you made, and this will go back to what Robert was saying about the ice storm. We ended up going over by we had to go borrow $850,000 ourselves. So how did we spread it out, payment plan?
New mic. And testing one. All right. The ancillary charges were $840,000. They allowed us to spread that out over 3 years. We did not take a loan. It was just added to the bill.
Okay.
So there is a line item.
So if we were to go into, and again, we're going to have this discussion more later tonight, I'm sure, in the budget process. If we were to have a surplus that due to months like this where the revenue came in more than had been budgeted or anticipated, if the opposite of that were to occur, I'm not sure how we're going to go back and collect that. It's going to have to come out of the general fund.
It sounds like the payment plan's already been agreed to, though. Sounds like a payment plan.
I'm just talking about, I'm trying to take your analysis and then devil's advocate, flip it back to the other side. What if we're wrong and we haven't collected enough? Maybe we create a surplus plan and at a certain point it triggers a rebate, or this is going to be something that we have to discuss.
Yeah, that makes, that makes sense to me. I mean, I'm not suggesting that you give it to us this month, not knowing that you've met your budgetary goals for the year, right? That's insane. I think I'm suggesting that as you get to the end of the year and you've got a surplus, you give it back. And I'd like to ask a question, Robert, about the URI, if I can. take
Yeah,
just a
sure.
Second. Well, so this came up when I was doing my research. A lot of energy providers have begun to sue the natural gas providers in the state over the idea that they colluded over natural gas prices and caused a lot of the pain that we see. CPS settled out of court in San Antonio for a lot of money. We're seeing more lawsuits. Now, my concern is, my question and a concern, LCRA might very well sue and get a lot of money back out of court, right? And likely it won't be public. If LCRA gets any money back, is there one, do you know of any plans for LCRA to sue? And two, if they get money, do we just get the short end on that? And will it get passed on to us?
Without getting in too much detail, that did happen. We did get some credits.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any more questions? For it? Yeah, thank you.
So I don't live in the city limits yet, so I pay more money. I don't like that. I live in Quail Run and that subdivision's been out there for 40-something years. And I think that whatever our rates are higher for, it's uncalled for. So I would like the city to consider looking at that. I know that you're planning Gale Bohot. Yeah, so we don't do, we have city utilities. Yeah. Okay, we have city utilities. We don't have, police. They don't take care of our streets and stuff like that. That's fine. But we do pay higher rates. And I like the fact the way you explained that, because I thought exactly what you said is happening, that the city, I know, even though I didn't live here for a while, I kept up with Post and I knew what was going on, that the tax revenue in the city was down and everything. And I know that you have to make up for it. But I do think that we really need to look to the future, and we don't have a lot of businesses here like some towns have, and it forces us to go out of the city to spend our money maybe in the county, but we are not sending here. So I'd like for, I know that probably everybody's looking at that, to have some more development, to bring more tax revenue into the city. And then also I did some study, and not as much as he did, but I did. And I went on a lot of government websites, and this one's called Find Energy. And I'm not putting this out there to make an uproar, but maybe, Robert, I did share it with a couple of council members that you could kind of clarify somewhere down the line if this is a true statement. It says Smithville Utilities is headquartered in Smithville, Texas, and it provides electricity in the citizens located there. At the moment, and this was 2019 data, 2,272 consumers received their electricity from the supplier. These consumers are a mix of 356 commercial customers and 1,916 residential customer accounts. The residential electricity rate for patrons of Smithville Utility is on an average of 21.81 cents per kilowatt hour, which is higher than both the Texas and national average rates of 12.94 and 15.33 cents per kilowatt hour, respectively. On the 38,299 megawatt hours the provider sold and disposed, 38,299 were from retail sales. The electricity source by the company is made up primarily wholesale purchase megawatt hours, with 38,299 megawatt hours required by the company. The revenue for the Smithville Utilities for 2019 from electrical sales was $4,959,000, with 100% coming from retail sales to end users. The state average monthly residential electric bill is $137.05, while the Smithville Utilities average is 63.25% higher. at $219.98 per month. Smithville Utilities is the 214th ranked supplier in the state for average monthly bill amount. Electricity generation is not part of the Smithville Utility Business Plan, as they purchase electricity at wholesale rates from other companies and then resell to their customers. And unfortunately, we have people here who make a good salary, but we have a lot of retired people here. And we have a lot of people that are lower income. And this is really hard for them. And so my hope for the city is, if we can figure out a way to attract businesses here to where we don't have to go to Bastrop or we don't have to go to LaGrange for everything. I buy almost all my groceries here, and I know I pay a little bit more than I do if I go to HEB, but I want to put the tax dollars back into my community. So thank you.
Gail.
Just for clarification, if, because there's a lot said about if you have a problem, come see us and we'll work with you. Is it the city's policy that if someone comes before the deadline, the 10th, and they ask for a plan and a plan is granted, does it always include waiving the late fee? And can we consider that as a policy? It seems to me if someone's coming and saying they can't pay their bill, the last thing they can afford to do is pay the penalty. If they come in, I would like to see us, if somebody comes in and the city agrees to a repayment plan, that we waive that penalty for them.
Sure.
Absolutely. It just seems counterintuitive that if somebody can't pay and they come in good faith before the deadline and say, I can't pay my $200 bill, they sure can't pay the extra 20.
I would agree, but on the other side of that, there's credit card fees and the same thing applies. You charge, but I see what you're saying. I also understand that we do not shut off anyone's power when it's below freezing or above 100. So that's a perk, and all senior citizens, they don't pay the late fee. If you would like us as a entity in the budget process to waive that clause, we certainly.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just
Happy to do
speaking for
so.
me. I'm not, obviously the council needs to decide, but I just wanted to ask the question because quite honestly, I assumed, apparently incorrectly so, that if someone came down and couldn't pay, that we wouldn't charge them the fee because they can't pay their bill. Why are we charging them the fee too? Assuming that we agreed to a payment plan for them.
And I can say also that, the lost revenue from the 120 days letting people go, we've ratcheted that down from 120 to 90 to 60. Now it's 30. And so the amount of that late fee, we're seeing less late fees now because people are keeping up with it. Correct, Cynthia? Yeah. So, all right.
Discussion, you're seeing the importance of economic development. At the beginning of this meeting, we talked about economic development and how we need to be able to bring in more revenue. Now you're seeing the flip side of that is more revenue helps, doesn't always solve it, but it certainly would help some of these other considerations.
Thank you, everyone, for all your input. We're going to move on to the next item. Is Brian here? Oh, hello, Monica. We're going to hear from P&Z Monica Pose on a replat for A27 Decro Thomas 20.757 acres, parcel number 8729082 and 8716063. Property owners EGE Smithfield Land Holdings LLC, Elizabeth and Mark. Take it away, Monica.
Yeah, I couldn't pronounce that one either.
I did not practice that.
Monica Poss, Planning and Zoning Commission, 705 Hudgens. We are trying to clean up something that should have been done over a year ago when a developer owned some land over by the airport, had about 20.7 acres and decided to carve it into two pieces, 15.7 acres and 5 acres, and sell those parcels separately. He should have gone through the platting process then, but he didn't. What he did was have a survey done and make it look like two parcels on paper, sold the parcels in July of last year and January of this year, And then down the road, the buyers of those properties realized that the replatting had never been done. So legally, they do not own legally, they don't have a 5-acre parcel and a 15-acre parcel. It's still platted as one 20.7 acre parcel. So we are going back and asking to grant the replat to clean up something that should have been done a long time ago.
Any
Sec-
questions for Monica?
Sell them on a meets and bounds?
They sold it. Yeah, they sold it off a survey with meets and bounds. there's a
So
copy
did-
of the survey.
Yeah, so did they buy, but same buyer bought both tracks?
No,
Different
two
tracks?
separate buyers.
Any other questions for Monica? Okay, thank you, Monica.
You're welcome. One of you, I don't remember who always asked, the decision was unanimous to recommend approval.
Way to go, Monica. Thank you. All right, we will close the open meeting and go back into the public hearing. Anybody signed up to speak? Okay, well, we will adjourn the public hearing and go back into the open meeting. Next item on the agenda, discussion and action on a replat for A27 DeCrow Thomas 20.75 7 acres. Parcels number 8729082 and 8716063. Property owner UGE Smithfield Land Holdings LLC. Ms. Elizabeth and Mr. Mark. Council, you have any questions? If no questions, I'll entertain a motion.
I make a motion that we approve the replat on let's see, A27 DeCrow Thomas 20.757 parcels number 8729082 and 8716063. Property owners UGE Smithville Land Holdings LLC and Elizabeth and Mark.
Thank you.
I'll second that emotion.
A motion has been made and second. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. Any opposed? Motion is approved. Next item, discussion and action on authorizing Samco Capital Markets, the city's financial advisor, to proceed with the issuance of tax notes, including drafting a preliminary official statement and conducting a bond rating. Go ahead.
Okay, Council Mayor, before we look at the what, let's look at the how. So there's a list of proposed tax note items that you're going to consider during the budget process. But I've asked Andrew Friedman here from Samco to give you his presentation about what the steps are to actually acquire and take out the tax note for $3 million. This is Andrew Friedman. He was here last year. Yeah. So Andrew, welcome.
I press the button. Have a short presentation here regarding taking out a tax note, something we've done each of the last 2 years, that would be repaid from the city's ad valorem tax levy. You've got the maintenance and operations, which funds the ongoing operations of the city, and the interest and sinking portion of your tax rate combined is what residents see on their tax bill when they get it. Now is the time that cities are generally borrowing for their general fund needs. You have to adopt a debt or you have to sell a debt prior to the adoption of your next year's tax rate in order to comply with truth in taxation. So you can set that tax rate, levy for it, and then make those collections come February. Shortly thereafter, you have your first payment. To go through this presentation, and I'm certainly happy to answer any and all questions you have, wanted to first look at what have your taxable assessed values been, starting with tax year 2022, which is your fiscal year 2023 that you're wrapping up. From the year prior to that, we'd grown 20.54%, and I outlined what your M&O and INS tax rates were to arrive at a total tax rate of 54.89 cents. We have the certified values for the city from Bastrop CAD for this year, which will be tax year 2023, $455 million, representing an over 15% increase in your values. And then the proposed, certainly not adopted, tax rate for the city, which would keep your tax rate at its current level of 54.89 cents. Due to changes in state law from the 2021 legislative session, there are caps imposed on cities that keep your M&O levy going no higher than 3.5% higher than the year prior. And what that does when you grow at a rate above 3.5% is force your M&O rate down. So what that presents the city with the opportunity to do is to borrow money should you have needed capital improvements or fleet vehicles, other types of projects to take on a debt repaid from the INS while maximizing all of your available revenue for the general operations of your budget and maintain that same total tax rate.
Clarification, can you explain M&O and INS so all of us understand
Certainly.
those?
So the maintenance and operations portion of a city's tax rate is goes to support the maintenance and operations of the city, which is generally your payroll and other budget features of your what's in the audit is your general fund. Robert or Cynthia would be in a better position to go through all of the many things that make up your general fund budget. But that's not your utilities. That's not your electric fund. That's not water and sewer. That's not drainage. It's to really predominantly pay for police, fire, EMS, and all of your administrative staff here at City Hall. And then the interest and sinking fund is a separate tax rate. It's already in place for the city. It supports much of your outstanding debt, although not debt that is paid for the benefit of your utility improvements that you all have made over the years. And that each year has to be set at a level to pay that next year's debt service. So the INS rate fluctuates or has the chance to fluctuate depending upon what your next annual debt service payment is in a given year. Does that answer the question? So the next slide, should you all determine to move forward with a tax note, if you'll recall from the last 2 years, we have been able to privately place our tax notes and our debt, meaning that we solicit for bids from local, regional, and national banks, and they buy and hold the bonds through their 7-year maturity. And we were able to get very attractive interest rates because banks' cost of funds over the last couple of years was very low. And then we've been able to avoid different costs of issuance, having to go to Standard & Poor's and pay for a credit rating. That runs about $15,000. Having to print and deliver an official statement, which summarizes the security for the bonds. And so we've been able to do that very cost effectively, the cheapest alternative for us to borrow money. What we've seen over the past year is that banks' costs of funds have gone up much higher than they've been through COVID and really even before that. Right now, at least one bank that I do business with is at about 5.25%. So if we go to banks for them to lend to us, their tax exempt yield, that there's only a few that are even in the market that are interested in owning municipal bonds right now, is somewhere in the neighborhood of 4.6% for a 7-year loan. In contrast to that, when you have big cities that borrow lots of money, that could be $3 million like we're talking about here, or $1 billion for school districts or other places, you do what's called a public bond sale. Smithville has done that in the past. We haven't felt the need to do it over the last couple of years because we found a more effective way to borrow money. And what I'm advising this year is that we go back to a competitive but public offering of our bonds. We've done a cost comparative analysis to determine that the interest rates are lower and that even taking into account the additional costs of issuance of having to go that route, we could expect a net interest rate somewhere around 1% lower than trying to find a local bank or regional bank to partner with. Now, in the private, 1% lower than the 4.6. is what municipal bonds are yielding in that 1 to 7 range right now. So that would be our recommendation should the city determine to move forward with borrowing that $3 million tax note. The last page here in the analysis is the tax rate impact analysis that we've performed, worked with Mr. Tamble and Ms. Neal to come up with, looking at could we afford to borrow and manage the tax rate at its current level based on the certified values that we have. And the answer is yes. We've got those certified values. We know what's still under ARB and be able to go out and get your voter approval tax rate, which is certainly my first recommendation for all cities, is to get the legal maximum amount for your M&O, for your operations that you can, for the simple fact that when the legislature enacted that 3.5% cap, they came up with that 3.5% because that's generally the annual rate of inflation or close to it. Well, what we've experienced the last couple of years is that inflation has been that runaway train that's made so many headlines. So your health insurance premium and so many different things have escalated, to say nothing of many cities having to pay more to remain competitive in keeping city staff across the board, whether that's police, fire, or otherwise. So we're seeing operational costs go up. So I'd certainly recommend to you all to get as much out of your M&O levy as you can, because I would imagine that those costs have gone up and the city needs that in order to stay financially in a good position. So you can achieve that as well as borrow for this $3 million and manage the overall tax rate at the existing level of 54.89 cents. And I guess the last page, was the timetable of events. There's a deadline, as I mentioned, where we need to sell the debt prior to adopting the tax rate, which based on this, if you all decided to move forward with this tax note under a public sale, we would go to the rating agencies, conduct that rating call. You may or may not recall the city enjoys a AA- credit rating, which is a great investment grade rating. The better our credit rating, the lower our cost of borrowing. And so we're just a couple of notches below the AAA rating for a town of our size. I think it's a tremendous rating to have and helps to borrow as economically efficiently as possible. So we'd go to S&P, get that rating, and then we would put this out for a competitive bid for all of the investment banks working in the country for a bid due at 11 a.m. before your September 11th city council meeting. At that meeting, you all would be formally authorizing the sale of the tax notes. You're authorizing us to proceed this evening doesn't bind you to issuing the debt, but it allows us to proceed. Certainly, we only want to proceed down this path from tonight if you all are in agreement that all things being equal and everything coming out as expected, that you have the intention of borrowing. Because what we don't want to do is go to all of the effort, go through the rating process. And one of the reasons that we want your blessing to proceed right now is while your financial advisor, your bond attorney, everybody that works and earns a fee on this only gets paid upon the successful delivery of the notes. Standard & Poor's, once you have that rating call, they will bill you. They will be paid, whether that comes out of the city's general fund or out of the bond proceeds, as would happen in the normal course of business. So I want you all to be aware of that. And that's the reason for seeking that green light this evening.
What has been our historical rating? Have we been AA- for a really long time?
You have, I don't know exactly when we would have last been upgraded.
I'm just saying, when was the last time we actually had a rating done? A formal rating?
2014 was what I think I saw here.
Yeah.
Actually, we took a C of O in 2018, didn't we? 17,
We
18?
got rated then.
We did in 2019.
2019, yeah.
It was AA-.
AA-. Our last rating action was in 2014.
And I mean, I know in recent years, we borrowed money and kind of borrow money on we have a maturity table. I know that Cynthia's done it in the past that shows our debt maturities and how that plays out. Is there a policy about, how much debt we want to take? Has the city ever established a policy for, and I guess I need to back up. At what point would we from a debt perspective, be in jeopardy of losing or being downgraded, such that when we try to establish a policy, whether it's a formal policy or just a loose policy about where our debt limits are, should we be thinking about? Are we anywhere close to being,
The reality is we're not, and
we
the-
still have what, how many, is triple B plus still investment?
it is.
Yeah,
That's
so-
the lower end of the investment grade, and certainly do not want to see.
No,
it
no,
go
for
below
sure.
Double A minus.
Yeah.
In all
Right.
frankness, but what's interesting about the Standard and Poor's rating criteria, because they don't look at just Texas cities compared to Texas cities, they use that credit criteria for Smithville, the same as they do the city of New York, for instance. Their criteria is broken into 5 different categories. The largest that drive your credit rating is really socioeconomic, the metrics, which largely you all don't have direct control over. Certainly we've been seeing that improving across the state over the last couple of years. And then the amount of debt that you have actually only makes up 10% of your credit rating. One of the reasons for that is that these are supported by your ad valorem tax pledge, which is capped in the state of Texas by the Attorney General at $1.50. Our INS levy is way, way below that, and you all would be tossed out of office. Mr. Campbell would be fired if you ever issued so much debt as to push that $1.50. So I don't see, and then the other fact of the matter is we've been borrowing on 7-year repayment terms. Most cities are borrowing, especially for like long-term projects, 20 years, and Standard & Poor's wants to see that roughly 65% of your debt amortizes in the first 10 years. And so we're well above those thresholds. And with an ad valorem tax pledge, you're saying that we will levy a tax sufficient to repay this debt. So that mitigates a lot of risks for investors.
For the sake of simplification, we're basically taking an advance on future tax revenue.
I mean, that is true. A city doesn't have the legal ability to build a piggy bank or a reserve, so to speak, to go and pay for projects as you go, where you accumulate, a surplus of revenues. You're prohibited from doing that under state law. So when you want to fund capital improvements that are beyond, frankly, a de minimis amount, cities don't have another alternative but to go borrow money, whether that's bonds, whether that's capital leases, tax notes, certificates of obligation.
So when we evaluate the impact of inflation and what the budget needs are going to be, what if we need more than 3 million?
You could borrow more than 3 million. You could increase your tax rate. I
The
would,
3 million is based on keeping the tax rate where it is.
it's based upon your need, and we've tried to tailor it to keep it where, based upon looking into the future and not assuming a great deal of growth, that we believe that by issuing this debt, you'll be able to at least keep the tax rate where it is, if not going lower in future years, which would give you all the option in a future year to say, we've got more capital improvements we need, whether that's streets or otherwise. And that is that far right column.
What was that percentage you used for the amortization? Was it 65%?
They want to see that
Within-
65% of the principal
Of
of
the
any debt
principal.
outstanding amortizes within 10 years. And I don't have that metric handy, but you are out of debt entirely by 2033, and that's from the 2019 certificates of obligation, I believe. Oh, thank you very much.
Putting up the tax note, I want the citizens and the council to know that I had many meetings with my staff to talk about the things that they needed to help reduce other costs, like new capital equipment for vehicles, our maintenance and operations. Servicing these vehicles is significant. If you have new vehicles, that drops off. The point I want to make about this list, which is not up yet. Yeah, thank you. This one. It would help if I knew it was behind me, right? There's a big bear behind you. I just have to run faster. Okay. So there are three categories: police needs, public works and utilities, and then general. Again, many hours were spent coming up with this list to get to the $3 million. Having said that, the bond is being structured to give you the most flexibility, the tax note, whereby you identify the categories of things, expenditures that you would like to purchase or fund. Ergo, infrastructure improvements, facility upgrades, or capital equipment. Bond counsel is working on that verbiage to give us the most flexibility of what to purchase. You may decide down the road you don't want playground equipment. You'd rather use $200,000 to pave streets. That's completely acceptable and legal to do. So although this list is a stab, it's not the end all proposition. I mean,
Did you receive that from your 22 departments on what they recommend?
yes, indeed. And to this point, we have 3.5 years to spend this down and 7 years to pay it back. Okay, just so you know, but that's all I have to say about that.
We approve authorize Samco Capital Markets, the city's financial advisor, to proceed with the issuance of tax notes, $3 million, including drafting and preliminary official statement, and conduct the bond rating.
I'll second.
Been made and second, all in favor? 1, 2. Any opposed? Motion is approved.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Drive
Thanks,
safe.
thanks for sticking in there with us.
Number 3, was that any questions of personal? Who does?
Speak faster.
Mayor, question of personal privilege is the way it's supposed to be worded. Can we have a 3-minute bio break?
You have to take a vote.
Okay, got vote and then go fast, hurry.
You'll be happy to know we have brand new restrooms that are to the left. So
There's only one
Thank you all.
toilet in there.
what? Oh, the faucet doesn't work?
What did he say? Yes, ma'am. the room now. Discussion and action on renewing the interlock agreement to support 911 geographic information management between Bastrop County and the city of Smithville.
I
Please-
have that ability to clean out a room real fast.
Oh, state your name.
Dylan Peschke, I'm a GIS analyst with Bastrop County. I've been there for about a year and a half now, so I work for Judy Summerfield. So, and I am in Smithfield quite often. I live in Serban. And I'm always over here. I'm with Jill doing theater stuff all the time, and I camp quite a bit over River Bend, so we're always around here. So
Oh, wonderful.
love the community here. What I have here, each year, we have to renew a contract between Bastrop County and the city of Smithville. The county renews theirs with Capcog. Capcog has it written in theirs that we have to renew ours with the cities in our jurisdiction. Not many changes actually in it. This is the same thing that's been a couple of years now. It's always the same. One of the changes I noticed right off the bat is it isn't called a contract anymore. Now it's an agreement. It's an interlocal agreement. That was the main change around here. Public agency, Jack Page used to be on it. Now it's Edward. You know what? I think we don't have Edward on there. Let me check.
Oh, no, that's a sign.
Oh, no, yeah.
No, that's,
Doc is pay.
Let me check. It has
56.
the city manager on it.
I'm there.
That's what information I was given when I wrote these.
You're the one we send when we were checking an address. For,
Right.
Yes.
Is it Tracy I work with? Tracy. I
There's
am
Tracy.
terrible with names. I am so bad with names.
There's two Tracys. so-
Okay. But yes, she's been doing a wonderful job working with me on corrections we need to make and working on things.
Great.
Okay, I will get that. I need to get your information so I can put that in here. And then I have to get these rewrote to get to y'all to sign. We're looking at getting into Commissioner's Court into this month, beginning of next month. If y'all want it prior to the Commissioner's Court signing it, or if y'all want it afterwards, I can work it either way.
We can certainly recommend to the council to pass with the caveat that the information be updated.
Okay, that'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one big change is this, that they changed it from contract to agreement. Everything else in here is pretty much the same, all this stuff. Like I said, Tracy and I have been working good together on this, so.
Good.
Well, not on this, but over the last year now, so. Any-
Janice
any
has a
questions?
question.
Yeah,
for you.
yeah.
So belong to Capcog, and so, they brief every couple months, where we stand as a county, compared to the other 10
Uh-huh.
folks. Where are we now as far as the addressing? We had some deadlines, and where is Bastrop County in the rankings for?
I wouldn't know how to rank it. We are well below our 2% threshold. In our stuff, we're only able to have, they want us to have 2% or less errors.
Okay,
We are well below 2%
okay,
errors.
thank you.
Yeah, Capcog, I was with the Homeland Security Task Force for the past 13 years before going to Bastrop County. I sat on the CAECD, so yes.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion. Or do we have any other questions or, we need this service to be safe in our town.
The good
so-
thing is it doesn't cost you anything but time, so.
I'll make a motion that we renew the interlocal agreement to support the 911 geographic information management between Bastrop County and the city of Smithville.
With the exception to add Edward and.
You're gonna,
Just
yeah,
Edward.
we need
Just
that.
Edward.
We need to add Edward.
Yeah,
say that.
okay.
Motion has been made and second, all in favor. 1, 2, 3, 4. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Do y'all want it after
Oh,
the
sorry.
county signs it, or do y'all want it? I can get it to y'all next week sometime. Either way,
It's up to you.
I'm always coming through town, so it doesn't bother me. I could drop it off next.
Drop
week
it
if I
off.
want.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for hanging in there with us.
Next item on the agenda is discussion and action on renewing the interlock agreement with Bastrop County for animal control services.
Okay, council and remaining citizens and mayor. This is a renewal of the interlocal agreement. The main difference between this and the ones in the past is that Bastrop County used to charge us a flat rate of $84 $8,400. Chief Repka has worked with William Dildine, who does an excellent job reuniting lost pets with their owners. And that prevents us from having to take that pet to Bastrop. And so this ILA has been changed from $8,400 to a per animal charge of $250, $225. And I think it's a great change to the agreement and recommend you all approve it.
I'll entertain a motion.
Anything else?
I make a motion that we renew the interlocal agreement with Bastrop County for animal control services.
Anybody gonna second me or?
I'll second that
There we go, Tyrone. Motion has been made and second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is approved. Not for sure what they're left about. Number 15, presentation from the Finance Director, Cynthia White, on information used to calculate the proposed ad valorem property tax rate. Come on down, Cynthia. What happened to your mic that used to be over there? It died? Oh. It's a casualty.
It's in there.
Oh, and the,
There you go.
lay it on us, Cynthia.
Turn on microphone.
Quit yelling at her.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Very
can y'all hear?
sensitive.
Okay, in your.
We've been
packet-
hollering at each other for weeks. So
Uh, uh, in your package, you have, I think there's like 3 documents that we're required to give to y'all just to let y'all know where our rates are. One of them was from the Bastrop County, which gives you signed by her that what the certified rates were. There's also the in the excess tax collections and stuff. These are all numbers that were used in the calculation of the tax rate, which is the form 5856, which is the steps that you have to walk through to actually calculate the proposed rates, debt rate, and all of that. So we are just required to let y'all know that's how we calculate it. And so that's that on that one. And I think the proposed rate is a separate item, right? Is it the next one?
It's number 16. I
Oh,
read
and then there's also the notice about the tax rate, which just basically tells you what the no new revenue rate is and what the voter approval rate is from those calculations out of that, kind of a summarized out of that big calculation that I have to go through.
Janice, you have a question for her?
It's on the protested values. I mean, do they come back or what happens there?
I mean, they're constantly updating
Are
that.
they?
I mean, we
Okay.
get a certified value that's on that day, and that's the
That's
number
it.
I use to calculate
Okay.
this rate. Those will come in, and so that's why it gets adjusted, but we don't go back and readjust our
Okay.
proposed rate. It's just too hard. You'd be constantly.
Tom, you have any questions? Anybody have any questions for her? So we'll go with the first one, the financial.
I've got a hypothetical I'd like to ask.
A hypothetical.
Hypothetical.
You're gonna send me another yellow note?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
No, ma'am. I'm gonna go by the Robert's rules here. If you were to plug in, this is for my edification, 3.5 million, how much would it move that tax rate?
Sure.
So I'm just saying, in your forms right there, that's an automated deal. I don't want you to do it now. I'm trying to get my arms around where we end up going. I've gotten a much better understanding of the 3 million and why we're doing 3 million. I'm just wondering if we did
Oh, you mean
3.5
for the
million.
tax note?
Yes,
Oh, okay. I thought, yeah, as you increase that, then the debt service rate that's on
So
the worksheet, which I don't have in front of me, would actually, the debt rate would go up. So the more debt you take out, the higher debt rate would go up.
so we're at the maximum when we do
We're
3
at the
million.
maximum rate we can have to keep our tax rate, property tax at what it currently is.
Okay,
because I calculated it before we added the 3 million note. And you could see it would have dropped down.
Yeah.
5 cents. But by doing that tax note at that $3 million rate, we get to keep our property tax rate.
It kept the
level.
tax rate
If you
level.
go above that, then your property tax rate is going to go higher.
Right, so it's a plug-in number.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
That's the reason why the tax note is. on
Yeah,
the-
and that's why we're trying to stay.
Okay, so anybody else have any questions or can you entertain a motion for?
Well, this one was just a presentation, so there's. Huh?
Oh,
Yeah,
I have a
there's.
motion to go.
no- Ooh,
Okay, Cynthia, number 16 then.
What?
I know, but yeah, sorry. I thought she needed one.
16.
16,
Read it.
discussion and action on proposal to set the ad valorem tax rate at September 11, 2023 council meeting.
Yeah, and that worksheet tells you what we would propose to set our rate at with the new
With the new
debt.
debt.
And that new debt is built into that proposal.
Which that debt, that
We're-
proposed tax rate stays the same, 0.55.
Right, it is, you can
5489.
see, I've got the current,
Yep.
what the current is versus and the voter approval rate, which is basically where we're taking it to, is the highest rate we can go without causing an election and
Correct.
all that stuff we don't really want to do. So,
Now, again, although you guys are considering this tax rate, you have to also understand that the home values went up from 211,000 to 235,000. So even keeping the rate current, it's going to cost the taxpayers $128 on average, more than they paid in 2022. But it will give the ability to fund some of the things that normally we would not be able to fund and maintain your tax rate at a level state.
yeah. And this is just to do the proposed now.
Yes,
It will
and-
actually come back at the.
Yeah, again, you're voting on to set the date at the, set the rate at the September 11th council meeting. You're not agreeing to the rate. This is a proposed rate. So I want to make that distinction.
Entertain a motion, Mayor.
I am ready.
I move that we approve the proposal to set the ad valorem tax rate at the September 11th, 2023 council meeting.
Motion's been made and second. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion is approved. Okay, do I, discussion and action, discussion and possible action on budget process. All.
Okay, Council and Mayor, I've been asked to kind of put together the process, a timeline of, how does this thing called the budget work? And I did this late this evening. Sorry for the late notice, but it should be on it's going to be on the screen. Okay. Again, basically just wanted to have this discussion, but I jotted some things down of the process that we try to follow every year. It starts in July. We typically target a 5% year-over-year increase unless other special things going on that need to be addressed, like COLA, equity, merit. It starts off with identifying where are we with respect to revenue versus expenses in the 9/10ths or 9/12ths or 10/12ths timeframe, the June, July. Where are you against your budget? What can you afford to do? What projects and plans do you want to tackle in the coming year? What projects and plans are going to migrate over from the current year to the next? What are those costs? What are your top 3 to 5 projects for every department head? We meet several times to identify what those are. Always trying to prioritize needs. You need a head count. What does the council, what special projects would you like to see? What have citizens asked you that they would like to see? So all of these things are taken into consideration, but you have to understand where you are and where do you want to go and how you're going to get there. Everything costs more money. It was mentioned health insurance, property insurance, and the timing of when we have these meetings until you have those numbers. Like, what is our new health insurance plan going to cost the city? You know, what's the new deductibles, property insurance, contract services, grant matches. Are rates going to go up? Electric, water, sewer. So all these things you have to take into consideration. We haven't pushed the button yet. We're still working to figure out, can we do some of the things we want to do? And the tax note is going to help us do that. But Cynthia hasn't hit the invisible button. We're going to do that and have to do that in the next 4 days. Yeah, so I know you're so you have your proposed plans and what it costs. If you can't finance it, you don't want to raise taxes or fees, you got to cut. And so that's where we are. When she pushes the button here tomorrow, the next day, because we got the health insurance rates, it's going to go up, unfortunately. Property insurance is going up, unfortunately. We'll know if we can afford some of the things that we want to do. If we can't, cut. To call it, Chief Rep used to call it the meeting of false hope. Yeah, yes, you did. But we're, yeah. It's a great name. Anyway, so that's where we are. The proposed rate and the tax note. We'll know in 3 to 4 days. I will try to get your packet. That's the goal in 4 days. It's going to be a lot of information to absorb. Our first budget workshop is the 23rd, Wednesday, 5:30 to about 11:30, I think is what the schedule. Okay. So that's kind of an overview of what we're doing. It's a lot of things that have to converge, and we're still, I say 75, 85% done with that process of pushing the button. Okay. Questions? Yeah, there's no. But there's no action. You've got to close. No action, correct? If there's no questions about the budget process or action. Okay, good.
All right, number 18, discussion and action on approval of the financial report.
Okay, as you should have your July financial report in there. As you can see, it definite improvement from the previous month. General fund still doing what I expected to do. The utility fund has definitely improved, especially due to the increased revenue and stuff like that. It's improving. I'm not sure what the heat and where we'll be at the end of the year, but hope would be we make what we projected, but it's hard to say. Again, the fund reserves, like you said, you can see that the general is good, and utility is not all together. We're kind of at a break-even point. So I don't know if y'all have any questions.
I do think the observation that we made a number of months ago about the run rate and the trend line on the utility fund is playing out. Obviously, July revenues, covered a lot of ground. And based on Robert's projections, that's going to come down in August. I asked Robert kind of offline, where we thought we only have 2 months left in the fiscal year. Are we going to come up short? And he thought maybe it was 165 or so when you combine water with electric. So I think it's also important, because Robert also shared this with me offline. When we do the budget at the beginning of the year, think about where we were a year ago with the economy and housing and the expectations for the number of houses being developed. Look around town at subdivisions that were proposed to start that are not doing anything right now.
My budget process.
Yeah.
now, 'cause
And
I
so
can't
metered
look-
sales, hookups, all those things are projections. And so again, it also has an impact on something Council Member Jameson has spoken to in the past, which is when we look at these 380 agreements and these incentive packages, you have to make some assumptions about the payback. And ultimately, I think we all agree we'll get the payback, but we're always not very certain when it's going to happen. And this is one of those years where, I bet if you go back and look at what we thought, for example, Enclave was going to do, the market's just not where it needs to be to have that revenue. So I'm encouraged that it's only 165. I mean, to be honest with you, I thought it was going to be like 350. So that's really good news. And if you go through all of the budget, the departments, and you see the personnel line items, most of them are running a little bit behind their run rate. So you can tell the city's managing unfilled positions as a way to offset that projection. So I think that's really encouraging that those offsets are taking place. I know you're shaking your head, but isn't that true? Okay. Thank you.
Everybody else good? Like, give me a motion. Get it, Tyrone.
A motion for the finance report for Miss Cynthia White.
Motion has been made and second. All in favor? Any opposed? Approved. Okay, I believe.
Question before we adjourn?
Heaven, Joe.
Okay. Workforce Training Center lease, Robert, September meeting is what you think? We're going to get a lease proposal?
Yeah, yes, sir. I'm working with the workforce, Ms. Morgan on coming up with something. And I expect it in September.
Yeah, no, we
Yeah.
don't have a lease. We've never-
Showbarn you do, but not the other building. So she's
Yeah.
working on that. Yeah, yes,
But-
sir.
Okay, so, and then the other thing is website for message board. Jill, I think is oh no, she is there. When do you think that'll be operational for us?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. I did pass forward a timeline. I left that for you, and that timeline is about what we expect is going to happen with the website. So, and I know that we had talked a while ago. We had, so if you remember, the process was that Andy came forward and he had 3 different organizations, different companies, and he chose Civic Plus. And then when we had our first initial conversations with them at that point, they hadn't, I'm not sure how it got dropped. Anyway, there was some miscommunication and they were not aware of a couple of the features that we were needing from them. And so we had to go back again and get that information from them and change the budget on that, because that was then more expensive than what we had presented to y'all the first time around. And so that was some delay in those first, I can't remember honestly how many months it took, but it maybe was 2 months before we kind of finally got Civic Plus approved of at that point. And so we had our kickoff meeting in 2 weeks ago. I want to say it was 2 weeks ago. Remember? 2 weeks ago. And what the timeline showing you is that the website should be up and running by January. And so we're going to be putting the message board into that new website. The current website isn't, I'm not the web guru person here, and we're losing Andy at the end of this month. And so it's integrated into, you know, what we are trying to do is to put that into the new website.
So is that January? Or is that sometime after January?
It should all be, when the website's live, it'll have the message board on it.
So January is what we think it's going to be.
January is our expectation, yeah.
You know, when we started talking about message boards, Jennifer, do you remember when that was? Year and a half ago. Okay.
Oh, it's like 2 years ago. Okay, anything else?
Question or follow-up on Cynthia's report. I had mentioned it last meeting, but is it possible when you go through the details on the check register that can be sorted alphabetically so we can kind of look as we go into the budget process where alphabetically? I asked about it last meeting. Okay. Yeah, I just, as we move into the budget process, I kind of want to know where the money's going, who the top payees are in terms of our vendors, and it's a budget process. Is that okay? Is that doable?
Why not? Yeah, why don't you get with her? And she
I'll send you an email. I don't need it now. I'm just talking about getting ready for the budget workshop. Year to date, I mean, for the fiscal year. Does that make sense? Not really. I'm assuming that that's just, you can export it to a spreadsheet and it's sortable on the name field. Yeah. Okay, thank you.
That's a pretty big report, though. Just wanted all the checks written the entire year? Is that what you're asking
No,
for?
not all the checks, a summary.
Okay, all right.
If
You're
if
gonna
it's
get
not
this part of the
doable, let
budget
me know.
process.
So, like
So-
by vendor, how much money have we paid? Yeah, I'm
She's talking about grouping them by payee to where you can see.
yeah, the way he
Yeah.
worded it.
Yeah.
Alphabetically will work. I can put it in a spreadsheet and go insert summary tabs. Exactly.
I would also say thanks to Robert. That was, I think, a great presentation on the electric thing. We all got a lot of feedback from the community and the presentation was good. So appreciate that.
I've been watching a lot of presentations for 3 years and that's up at the top of one of your best. That was really good, Robert. Thank you.
On that note, we are adjourned.